The NBA playoffs so far has been entertaining with some competitive series and great comebacks from underdogs making it to the conference finals in the Pacers and the Knicks in the East, as well as in the West with two young superstars that battled it out in the Thunder and SGA, and the Timberwolves with Anthony Edwards. Though this playoffs has not only shown the shift in stars who are advancing in the playoffs, but also the types of teams who are contenders. First, with older superstars in the West, like LeBron and the Lakers losing in the first round with a lack of a team outside of him, Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves. Stephen Curry and the Warriors, where their season ended early, mostly due to Curry getting injured in the first game of the semifinals this year. Then you have Kevin Durant that had a weirder journey than most superstars, especially since he's still performing this well at his age. Though he would not make the playoffs with the Suns, mostly due to the roster construction, not at the top with him and Devin Booker, but the rest of the roster just not being up to par. And this will most likely lead Durant to being on the move again, with the Suns' limitation to actually getting any talent, mostly due to Bradley Beal's big contract that's on the books that's nearly untradeable. And lastly, with Kawhi Leonard and James Harden with the Clippers, I do have a lot of questions for them going into offseason, though they definitely benefited from the improvements of players like Norman Powell and Ivica Zubac. But this current Clippers team is still at best a dark horse to win a stacked Western Conference right now. Now with some of the superstars in this era, the MVP leveled players in the last few years like Jokic, Embiid, and Giannis are all just short of being title contenders for vastly different reasons. First, with Embiid mostly due to constant injuries to the point where we don't know where he'll be at when he comes back next season, which most people are thinking it won't be at MVP level. With Jokic, the Nuggets just don't have enough depth around the starting lineup to really make a playoff run as of this moment, as we've seen the fatigue really wore on them throughout playoff series in the last two playoff runs they had. Now with Giannis, after winning the championship in 2022, that same championship core are either traded or out of their prime, and the biggest piece to their title contention, Damian Lillard, tore his Achilles in the playoffs, and it looks very unlikely for Giannis to want to stay on a rebuilding team next season, and just a team that's future is very uncertain at the moment. It really is setting up Giannis to end up being traded. Now to talk about the teams that was in the conference finals, both teams in the West look to be teams that can continue to contend at the top of the conference in the future, with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Anthony Edwards leading the way for their respective teams. Especially with OKC starting to build a young powerhouse in the West. And I think the Timberwolves have a decent chance of becoming a powerhouse, with their main core being Anthony Edwards on the offensive side and Jaden McDaniels on the defensive side. But the Timberwolves are going to have to retool their team just a bit, with their roster starting to become more expensive compared to their actual talent level. But there'll definitely be more teams in the West in the future that could contend with teams like OKC and the Timberwolves, like the Houston Rockets that have a really good young core, as well as teams with young assets like the Grizzlies and even the Portland Trail Blazers that have turned their roster around in the past couple years to now potentially trade for a star. And when you talk about the future of the West, you have to mention Victor Wembanyama and the San Antonio Spurs that recently acquired De'Aaron Fox in a trade earlier this season, as well as them having another high draft pick in this year's NBA draft. Now the thought for the Eastern Conference is that it should be an open race to make the finals for the next few seasons. Injuries have already done a number on a few teams, like with some teams I mentioned before in the 76ers, where nobody knows what type of player Joel Embiid will be once he comes back from his knee issues, losing a contender in the Bucks with Damian Lillard and Giannis, and the most notable team being the Boston Celtics with Jason Tatum out for the next season. And the thing is, with the Knicks and the Pacers that made the conference finals, there aren't really teams to be feared in the conference, with the Knicks still lacking bench depth and being unable to fix that due to the contracts of the starting lineup. And on the Pacers side, though they have some of the best chemistry in the league due to Tyrese Halliburton and their supporting cast of Pascal Siakam, Andrew Nembhard, and others, they're still missing a true top scoring option as well as a top defensive option to really put themselves as heavy favorites in the East. Overall, both teams are very beatable in a series, and it won't take too much retooling from some teams in the East to really become a contender in the East as well, alongside the Knicks and the Pacers. But essentially, by making the conference finals, both teams instilled more confidence in other teams that are in similar situations that have the chance to do the same as the Pacers and Knicks next season. And this includes teams like the Pistons that brought the Knicks to 6 games already earlier this playoffs, as well as the Magic that's looking to bounce back after their injury-riddled season, and other teams that can make some changes to their teams to become contenders right now. And the recent news around the league really shows that there are going to be some sellers this offseason, so this definitely gives some Eastern Conference teams with some assets a chance to get a star in the future. So overall in the playoffs, we're seeing these teams that are built differently making it far into the playoffs, and now this is leading to a matchup that's on paper to be very offensive heavy between two high-paced teams in OKC and the Indiana Pacers. And for the results of the playoffs, this will not only cause a shift in the Eastern Conference with teams trying to move up, but the Western Conference with teams trying to move down and try and rebuild. With the Western Conference setting up to become a war zone to say the least, with around 12 to 13 teams that have a solid chance of making it to the playoffs right now. Some teams just won't be able to hang for that long again. We've seen this with the Suns and Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, as well as teams already reaching their peak a little bit earlier with the Kings years ago, as well as the Pelicans as they moved on from Brandon Ingram earlier this season and probably looking to make more moves. So it'll definitely be fun to see in the offseason what these teams do, especially with playoff teams and how they could fix any of their weaknesses or mistakes they made in their last playoff run, as well as teams that just missed out on the playoffs and seeing how they'll be able to improve to become contenders in both conferences. So how do you guys feel about this new generation of stars starting to take over, as well as different teams making longer runs in the playoffs? And do you think your team will have the roster by next season to be able to compete in the playoffs? Please let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.